on your phone, like, there's a bite, you hear the bite right down the concrete. And now it matches my camera. So it matches your car. Try. But that's why I don't wear my Apple Watch, because I can do that. I can synchronize the thing. But that watch used to be synchronized with the studio clock. I don't know if it is anymore. I lose it like in a couple months. Not bad. Well, then you can synchronize it. I'm pretty sure it's some of the rules. I'm not leaving. What's that? Some of them are cameras. They do have like a wireless timepiece. It's almost the same. But
we used to have some boxes and specs. We used to have some boxes and specs.
oh right, yeah, I just like yeah, you guys had a little thing on the side of the camera. How did those work?
They're connected, right? They work all right.
So here.
No, I think we're asking about
Yes.
Where is Super Bowl this year? San Fran. Are you going to San Francisco?
probably be warmer there.
So I'm glad at least we're inside right now.
Part of Chicago.
There's always traffic there.
Yeah, it's convenient. I drove that drive hundreds of times because I looked like Toledo. I've been over to Chicago for 3 hours. It's like this time when you pull it, at least we have like toll road. It wasn't as bad as we got. The toll road never got as bad as I did. But still, it's like sometimes when it's really bad, you know, you got a toll road, you stay 28 across, 20 across. Because if what happens if there's like a bad accident on the toll road, I pick it up. I expect it.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Shane Russell, and I'm a lieutenant with the Patrol Division.
Standing with me today are Southfield Chief of Police Alvin V. Barron, Deputy Chief Aaron Hughley, who oversees the Investigations Division, and also Lieutenant Mustafa Beasy of the Investigations Division. Today, Chief Barron will address an incident that occurred on December 25th, 2025 at 9:36 p.m., which resulted in 2 fatalities. We ask that you please hold all questions until the conclusion of the briefing, and also that you silence or mute all cell phones or other electronic devices. A press packet is available on the back table, which includes a USB device containing all audio and video files from today. For record-keeping purposes, we also ask that you please complete the media sign-in sheet. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chief Alvin V. Barron.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And keeping in tradition, thanking the media for being here as well. It's important that we update the community on the tragic incident that occurred on Christmas Day. Very tragic for the families, certainly the remaining victims as well. I want to use this opportunity to share with the community lessons that we can learn from this tragic situation. We talk about domestic violence all the time. We hold press conferences. We join forces with other communities looking for suspects. Investigations that go into domestic violence incidents. And what I will ask the community or anyone who is the victim of domestic violence, it is the utmost importance. If you are a victim of domestic violence, please call 911 after any type of assault. It's important that you allow the law enforcement entities within your respective cities to respond and assist you in dealing with domestic violence. I also ask that if you are a loved one or a friend and you receive a call from a victim of domestic violence where they're asking you to come over and sit with them or gather their belongings, that if they didn't call 911, then you call 911. I'm not saying not to go over and be with your loved one. I'm saying call 911, ask law enforcement to meet you at the location to where your loved one is experiencing trauma. And that way you're protected because uniformed police are there. The victim is protected because uniformed police are there. And then even if the victim at that time is not ready to come forward and discuss the details of the assault or whatever the domestic trauma that's occurring, because they can always do it at a later date. But that exit plan, having that exit plan, does involve support for your loved ones, but also, again, having law enforcement present that will mitigate and reduce the issues that surround domestic violence and domestic violence assault. Because what happens, and it did happen in this instance, 911 not being called, rather friends called, that friend brings over someone to protect them in case something took shape, and then it escalates an already volatile situation. And I'll get into the details of this investigation momentarily. The third thing I'm going to remind everybody, because I've always talked about guns getting you in more trouble than they will ever get you out of. It's just a fact. Guns will get you in more trouble than they will ever get you out of. And why do I say that? Because emotion. People have emotions that they're unable to control. And then you add a firearm in the midst of emotion. The very first thing most of them do when emotions run high is reach for these weapons. And then ultimately, people are killed and or injured. So those are the 3 things I ask everyone to be very cognizant of. We're updating the community on a double fatal shooting that occurred in the 25,000 block of Shiawassee. That's 8 Mile in the Shiawassee area. And again, it occurred on Thursday, December 25th of this year at 9:37 p.m. This violent act deeply affected the families, the victims, the loved ones, and the community. We extend our deepest condolences to those impacted by this tragic loss of life. We remain committed to working with our residents and our community partners to address domestic violence and support those affected by domestic violence. On Thursday, December 25th, at approximately 9:37 p.m., Southfield Police and Southfield Fire Rescue responded to the Riverstone Apartments located at 8 Mile Shiawassee regarding a shooting that occurred inside of the apartment. Upon arrival, Southfield officers located 2 people suffering from gunshot wounds. Life-saving measures were initiated. The male, a 30-year-old resident of the city of Detroit, was transported to a nearby hospital by Southfield Fire Rescue, where he later succumbed to his injuries. A 23-year-old female was treated and transported to Providence Hospital for a gunshot wound to her hand. Additionally, a 20-year-old male, resident of the city of Madison Heights, was transported to an area hospital by his acquaintance prior to officers arriving on scene. He was also suffering from gunshot wounds and later succumbed to his injuries. Our investigation revealed that the 2 men exchanged gunfire, fatally wounding each other as a result of a domestic dispute between the 23-year-old female and her 30-year-old male boyfriend. Detectives interviewed the female victim, who resides at the apartment. She stated that this was a relationship with the 30-year-old male. She indicated that on Christmas Day at approximately 3 p.m., she arrived home and was confronted by the 30-year-old male. They began arguing over damaged property and allegations of infidelity, where she believed that he had been unfaithful. When she asked him to leave her apartment, he became upset and began physically assaulting her. The female victim told officers that she was slapped, strangled, and kicked multiple times during the assault. The officers did observe bruising on her neck, both arms, and both legs. The suspect left the residence after the assault. However, the victim stated that she did not contact law enforcement due to the relationship she had with the suspect's 3-year-old child, and she didn't want the suspects arrested, which would prevent him from being with his child. So I'm going to pause right here. The victim is referring to the suspect's child through a previous relationship, where she did gain a relationship with this child, and again, per our victim, didn't want the suspect arrested due to that relationship. And also she stated she feared for her safety because of the amount of violence that he had inflicted on her. And this is typical response from many people who suffer from domestic violence, not necessarily wanting their abusers arrested for various reasons, to include children. After the assault occurred, the victim contacted a female friend to sit with her at the apartment and to help her gather her boyfriend's belongings for him to retrieve at a later time. The victim's female friend arrived at the apartment accompanied by her male companion, her 20-year-old boyfriend. The victim, along with her friend, began gathering the suspect's belongings and placed them on the living room couch. As the victim and her friend's boyfriend prepared to leave the apartment, the group heard a loud knock at the door. The victim realized that the suspect had returned to the apartment and attempted to gain entry. The victim refused to unlock the door. He demanded that she let him inside the apartment. After denying him entry, he forced his way into the apartment by kicking in the door. The victim, along with her friend and her friend's boyfriend, were standing in the living room where the suspect forced entry into the apartment. The suspect had an AR-15 assault rifle, which was on the couch. As he was trying to retrieve the assault rifle, the female victim grabbed the rifle, trying to prevent him from gaining access to it. However, after a brief struggle, he gained control of the weapon. At that time, the 20-year-old male produced a 9mm handgun from his person and pointed it at the suspect. Both men immediately began shooting at each other. When the gunfire concluded, the 20-year-old male was transported to Corewell Health Hospital in Farmington Hills by his girlfriend, where he succumbed to his injuries, where he suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the chest from the assault rifle. The female victim, again our resident of the apartment, ran to a nearby bedroom and hid underneath the bed for approximately 10 minutes. She heard her boyfriend call out for help. She exited the nearby bedroom and walked towards the living room to check on him. She observed him hunched over the couch. She observed the assault rifle next to him. He made eye contact with her and shot 3 rounds at her, one taking effect on her right thumb. The victim ran out of the apartment and sought safety at a friend's apartment located in that same building. The suspect was transported to Royal Oak Corwell Health, Beaumont, where he succumbed to his injuries, where he sustained 8 gunshot wounds. The victim and her boyfriend were in a dating relationship for approximately 1 year. They have no children in common, as I mentioned previously. The AR-15 firearm is not registered to the suspect. We were able to learn that the rifle was purchased by someone in the city of Detroit. We're opening up an investigation for a possible straw purchase. We have notified the ATF to assist us in that investigation. The 20-year-old, that weapon is registered to him. However, he does not have a CPL for the weapon, but it is registered to him. So I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about those final moments of what I believe occurred when our victim stated that when she went to render him some sort of aid, after he looked in her eyes, he picked that assault rifle and then shot at her 3 times with that AR-15. She's fortunate to only have suffered a gunshot wound to her thumb, and she will make a recovery. But I have firm belief, because you talk about domestic violence, and you talk about strangling. If you're strangled by someone in a domestic violence relationship, the data shows that that's a path towards a homicide. You can look that up yourself. And it played out in this case because as he's laying there dying on the couch, he probably knew he was dying and then shot at her 3 times in an attempt to take her with him. We're just very fortunate that didn't happen. Also, there's a 3-year-old child that was present when this occurred. That 3-year-old child was in this room when that occurred as well. And we're very fortunate that this child was not struck. That child was taken to his biological mother after law enforcement arrived. So again, very tragic set of circumstances, certainly a nightmare unfolding on Christmas Day, a day designed for family gathering and joy and gifts, particularly for that 3-year-old child. But now it's ended in tragedy. So I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to show you some evidence that was collected at the scene. We'll start off by showing you the guns. You'll see the AR-15 rifle and also the 9mm handgun. Again, the rifle belonging to our primary suspect, the 30-year-old who, again, began the domestic violence assault, and then the 20-year-old, again, although the weapon is registered to the 20-year-old, it was not validly licensed to carry. Our next slide, I was just showing you the damage to the door. You see the door kicked in. You see the markings on the side of the door. And then you also see the footprints as well. And then I'll wait for you to focus back in, and I'll continue with further remarks. So our detectives have reached out to the victims and their families and offered them services from Haven, which is a huge partner from the Southfield Police Department when it comes to domestic violence and the aftermath of domestic violence. just to share some ideas, some resources that are available. Again, I'm going to do a quick recap before I open up for questions. Just reminding everybody for another time that if you are a victim of domestic violence, call 911, particularly after an assault. Allow law enforcement an opportunity to intervene. Even if your plan is to either put someone out of your home or collect your belongings to leave the home, have law enforcement, uniformed law officers there present to help you through that process. Again, if you receive a call from a loved one who has been victimized by domestic violence, certainly help your loved one. I would help my loved one. But I'm going to call 911 and ask uniformed officers to meet me at that location. So there's protection for me, there's protection for my loved one, and that way the atmosphere is properly managed. And then third, these guns. These guns will get you in more trouble than they will ever get you out of. It's a fact. Particularly if you don't know how to manage your emotions, you don't understand the process of properly storing them, and understanding that it's a huge responsibility to carry a firearm. And with that, I open up the floor for questions.
Chief, was the aggressor who hit his girlfriend suspect, was he known previously to law enforcement for domestic violence incidents? Was there reports or anything?
Not that I'm aware of any reports. And just like this case here, obviously there had been previous domestic violence, but it went unreported for the reasons that I mentioned. And like I said, this happens often in domestic violence cases where the abuser has control over these victims, whether it's emotionally, financial, children in common, all sorts of avenues that individuals who commit domestic violence have on their victims. So this press conference is not a manner of re-victimizing, but we got to get the information out about what can be learned from this. 2 people are dead. And we have to look at what things could have been done differently that may have changed the outcome. And one of those is alerting law enforcement to respond. Any other questions? It appears that only after the gunshots rang, additional calls came in to 911. Yes.
Do you see an uptick of domestic violence during the holidays?
Yes, the national data on domestic violence does discuss the importance of domestic violence awareness, particularly during the holidays, which should be a joyful time of year, is also a stressful time of year for many people. A lot of family conflicts, whether intimate partner relationships or family disputes, seem to occur during these times, and some unfortunately do end tragically. And so, again, we're going to continue to raise awareness of domestic violence. We're going to continue to share information with the community, and that way you at least have the information and then make a decision accordingly to what's best for you and your family.
Any indication of the stress of the holiday led up to this?
No indication of that. Our investigation just revealed that damaged property and allegations of infidelity was the root cause that escalated this to this tragic event.
And just to clarify, you said the woman had reported that she had had some incidents of domestic violence with this man prior during their year-long relationship.
Yes.
But never reported.
Correct.
Chief, in this tragedy, this obviously extended beyond the girlfriend, the primary victim. You have his 3-year-old son who witnessed this. The gentleman from Madison Heights who was there with the handgun, but I understand even beyond that, correct me if I'm wrong, there were bullet holes in the hallway here that were during this exchange of gunfire. So I mean, this could have been someone else who was in another unit, could have been walking by, or could have gotten caught up in this incident.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're talking about a high-powered rifle, even the 9mm handgun discharged in an apartment building where there's plywood, wooden doors, and we all know these rounds do go right through those. They penetrate those barriers very easily. And so we're very fortunate that that did not occur when no one, any passerbyers or anyone in an adjacent apartment was struck by gunfire. But yes, you're absolutely right. It could have led to a much broadened crime scene and affected even more families than already has.
You said the victim or the victim's friend, neither of them called 911. Did the victim's friend indicate why she didn't? Because obviously the victim didn't want him arrested because of the child. Did you talk to the victim's friend at all?
Yeah, no indication of why. You know, probably just supporting her friend. You know, she called me for help. Let me go help. Let me bring my boyfriend over to assist. And you know how that goes. You know, he comes with a firearm to protect his loved one. And then when these two men come in contact with each other, both in possession of weapons, you have the primary suspect trying to retrieve an AR-15 assault rifle. Then that exchange of gunfire took place. So, you know, just unknown of why, other than what we see in domestic violence cases. It's not unique to this case. There are many more domestic violence situations where 911 is not called. People either leave the location, they sometimes deal with it, sometimes they flee and just hide and they never report it out of fear or different reasons. But domestic violence is real. We have to continue to keep our eyes open, our ears open. And again, if you receive that call, because generally they call someone. If your intention on going to meet with them, I don't care if it's at the location anywhere, have law enforcement meet with you wherever the plan is to meet. Give that person an opportunity, if they did not want to talk to law enforcement at that time, maybe they'll change their mind once you bring them. Or if they're not ready to, the law enforcement agency that will arrive will give them the information on how they could bring forward these crimes at a later date. But either way, we want to support victims of domestic violence by listening to them and, most importantly, believe them. When someone tells you that they're a victim of domestic violence, you have to believe them and then get the resources that they need to escape their abuser. So our primary suspect, the one involved in the domestic dispute, was struck twice in the chest. 8 times. The 20-year-old was struck 2 times in the chest. Yes, ma'am. So I'm not releasing the names of anybody associated with the incident. I prefer to have a balanced press conference. As you know, both are deceased. And at this time, I just want to share with the community what happened and not dive into any more trauma for the families who are already grieving and upset already. Because again, this will not end up in a court. This ended in the apartment building. And I want to be as delicate as I can in delivering the information and then managing the families, their emotion during this difficult time of year. But thank you for the question. Thank you.